In April 2023, Jamie Foxx collapsed on a film set. No warning, no explanation. His body simply shut down. 20 days later, he woke up remembering nothing. 20 days erased from memory, as if they had never existed. There's a man who won the Oscar, the Grammy, dominated comedy, music, and film all at the same time. But behind every award, every standing ovation, every performance that made the world weep, there's a story the cameras never fully captured. Because this isn't just the account of a superstar who conquered Hollywood, it's the story of a boy abandoned at 7 months old who had to create a fake name just to get 5 minutes on stage. Of a comedian nobody took seriously until he delivered one of the most devastating performances in cinema history. And of a man who almost lost everything in 2023 when his body said enough and he came within minutes of never waking up again. How did a child rejected by his own mother transform into the most versatile artist of his generation? What did he sacrifice to prove he was more than jokes and impressions? And who was the voice that brought him back when doctors were already preparing his family for the worst? Before we answer, we need to go back in time, to a small town in Texas, to a deafening silence, and to the moment when it all began. Before the world knew Jamie Foxx, there was Eric Marlon Bishop, a boy born in December 1967 in Terrell, Texas. A small town where everyone knew everyone, and silence carried more weight than words. His birth should have been a beginning. Instead, it became an abandonment. His mother, Louise Annette Talley, was only 17, overwhelmed and unprepared. His father, Terrell Bishop, was absent even before Eric took his first breath. By the time Eric was 7 months old, his mother made a decision that would scar him for life. She walked away, not temporarily, not with promises to return. She simply left. But Louise did not leave her son to strangers. She placed him in the arms of her own parents, Estelle and Mark Talley, strict, deeply religious grandparents who raised Eric not with warmth, but with discipline carved from the Old Testament. They gave him a roof, food, and rules. What they could not give him was the one thing a child craves most: the feeling of being chosen. Years later, Jamie would confess, with quiet devastation, "I never felt like I was enough. My mother didn't want me. My father never came. And my grandparents raised me like it was their duty, not their desire." That absence, that silent rejection, became the invisible wound he would carry onto every stage, into every spotlight, behind every smile. Terrell was not a town of dreams. It was a town of cotton fields, church on Sundays, and expectations that crushed more spirits than they lifted. The Talley's home was austere. Mark Talley, a yard worker, ruled with severity. Estelle, a domestic worker and nursery operator, measured love in scripture and discipline. There were no tender bedtime stories, no casual affection. There was Bible study, choir practice, and the constant reminder that idle hands were the devil's workshop. Eric learned early that survival meant performance. At New Hope Baptist Church, he discovered the one place where he could earn applause instead of silence: the piano. By age 5, his small hands were already dancing across keys, playing hymns with a precision that stunned the congregation. Music became his language when words failed, his refuge when loneliness pressed too hard. But even as the church clapped for his talent, Eric felt the sting of difference. Other children ran home to mothers who kissed scraped knees. Eric ran home to a grandmother who asked if he'd practiced his scales. Other kids talked about fathers who taught them to throw baseballs. Eric's father was a name without a face, a ghost he would not meet until adulthood. and even then, only briefly. The cruelty of his situation deepened when his mother occasionally reappeared, not to reclaim him, but to visit like a distant relative. She would breeze into town, offer a smile, and leave again, each departure reopening the wound. She treated me like I was someone else's responsibility, Jamie later admitted. And every time she left, I felt more invisible. School offered no escape. At Terrell High School, Eric was bright, athletic even, a star on the football field and basketball court. But popularity is a shallow balm when you return each night to a home where love is conditional. He became the class clown, the boy who could make others laugh to avoid letting them see how deeply he hurt. His humor was not born from joy, it was born from survival. A shield against the questions he could not answer. Why didn't my mother want me? Why didn't my father stay? Why do I have to perform just to feel seen? And yet, beneath the rejection, something unbreakable was forming. The discipline his grandparents enforced, harsh as it was, taught him structure. The church piano taught him musicality. The loneliness taught him empathy. And the abandonment taught him that if the world would not give him a place, he would carve one himself. Eric Bishop was not born into privilege or affection. He was born into absence and raised in silence. But from that silence, he would one day create a voice so loud, so versatile, so undeniable, that the world would have no choice but to listen. The boy who felt invisible was about to become impossible to ignore. In 1989, at 21 years old, Eric Bishop made a decision that terrified his grandparents and bewildered everyone in Terrell. He packed a single suitcase, boarded a bus to Los Angeles, and walked away from the only life he had ever known. He had no connections, no safety net, and no plan beyond a fierce, desperate belief that he could make strangers laugh. Los Angeles was merciless. The comedy clubs of the early 90s were battlegrounds where hundreds of hungry performers fought for 5 minutes of stage time. Eric quickly discovered a brutal truth. Comedy was not a meritocracy. It was a lottery controlled by club owners who decided who performed and when. Night after night, Eric signed up for open mics at the Comedy Store, the Improv, and the Laugh Factory. And night after night, he watched as the same names were called while his remained on the list, ignored. He would wait for hours, sometimes until 2 a.m., only to be told there was no time left. I was invisible again, he later recalled, just like in Terrell. Except this time, I'd traveled across the country to feel it. Then came the observation that changed everything. Eric noticed a pattern. Female comedians were getting called to the stage faster, more consistently. The clubs wanted gender balance in their lineups, but there were far fewer women signing up. The inequality was blatant, but Eric saw opportunity where others saw injustice. He made a calculated gamble. He chose an androgynous name, one that could belong to anyone, Jamie Foxx. Jamie could be male or female. Foxx was a tribute to comedian Red Fox, a nod to the legends he admired. But the brilliance was in the ambiguity. When club owners scanned the sign-up sheet and saw Jamie Foxx, they assumed it was a woman and called the name early. By the time Eric, now Jamie, stepped onto the stage, it was too late for them to take it back. And once he had the microphone, he never let go. The strategy worked. Jamie began getting consistent stage time, but the name alone was not enough. He had to deliver. And deliver he did. His act was explosive. Rapid-fire impressions, physical comedy, musical interludes on the piano. He could slip from Bill Cosby to Ronald Reagan to a church preacher in seconds, each voice sharper than the last. Audiences were stunned. This was not just another stand-up comic. This was a performer who could do everything: sing, dance, act, mimic, all while holding a crowd in the palm of his hand. Word spread quickly through the Los Angeles comedy circuit. Talent scouts began showing up, and in 1991, Jamie received the call that would rewrite his life. Keenen Ivory Wayans, creator of the groundbreaking sketch comedy show In Living Color, wanted him to audition. The show was already a cultural phenomenon, a raw, unapologetic celebration of black comedy that shattered barriers and launched careers. Jim Carrey, David Alan Grier, and the Wayans brothers were household names. To join that cast was to step into comedy royalty. Jamie auditioned, and he was hired. From 1991 to 1994, Jamie Foxx became a breakout star on In Living Color. He created unforgettable characters. Wanda Wayne, the flamboyant, oversexed diva who became a fan favorite. Ugly Wanda, a grotesque but hilarious commentary on beauty standards, and countless impressions that left audiences howling. His musical talent set him apart. While others delivered sketches, Jamie could sing, play instruments, and shift seamlessly between comedy and performance art. But even in success, shadows lingered. Behind the scenes, Jamie struggled with identity. He was no longer Eric Bishop, the abandoned boy from Terrell. But was he truly Jamie Foxx? Or was that just a mask he wore to survive? The applause filled the void his mother and father left, but only temporarily. Each laugh was a bandage, not a cure. Still, In Living Color gave Jamie something he had never possessed: visibility. The boy who was ignored in comedy clubs, who waited until 2 a.m. for a chance, was now performing in front of millions every week. Eric Bishop had died in obscurity. Jamie Foxx was being born under blinding lights. By the time the show ended in 1994, Jamie had proven he could conquer comedy. But he knew something the world did not yet understand. Comedy was only the beginning. His ambitions stretched far beyond sketches and stand-up. He wanted to act, to sing, to become undeniable. The question was no longer whether Jamie Foxx could succeed. It was whether the world was ready for how far he was willing to go. By the mid-90s, Jamie Foxx had conquered comedy. His face was recognizable, his impressions legendary, and his stand-up specials drew sold-out crowds. In 1996, he even landed his own sitcom, The Jamie Foxx Show, which ran for 5 successful seasons. He was wealthy, famous, and beloved by millions. But inside, Jamie felt trapped. Comedy had given him everything: visibility, security, applause. Yet it had also become a cage. The industry saw him as one thing and one thing only: a funny guy, a mimic, a clown. When casting directors reviewed scripts for dramatic roles, Jamie's name never appeared on the list. They couldn't see past the jokes, he admitted years later. To them, I was Wanda. I was the guy who made people laugh. I wasn't the guy who made them cry. Hollywood has always been ruthless about typecasting. Comedians who attempt drama are often dismissed, mocked even, as if the ability to make people laugh somehow disqualifies them from making people feel. Jim Carrey faced it. Robin Williams fought it for years. And now Jamie Foxx was staring at the same wall, invisible once again, but this time by choice of an industry that refused to see him whole. But Jamie was not a man who accepted limits. If they would not offer him dramatic roles, he would hunt them down himself. He began studying acting with an intensity that shocked those around him. He took classes, watched classic films obsessively, dissected performances by Denzel Washington, Al Pacino, and Robert De Niro. He was no longer content to entertain. He wanted to transform. In 1999, the breakthrough arrived. Director Oliver Stone was casting Any Given Sunday, a brutal, unflinching look at professional football. The role of Willie Beeman, a cocky third-string quarterback thrust into the spotlight, required someone who could embody arrogance, vulnerability, and raw athleticism. Stone took a gamble on Jamie. On set, Jamie did not show up as a comedian trying drama. He showed up as an actor. He studied football mechanics, spent hours with real NFL players, and threw himself into the physicality of the role with reckless abandon. His performance was electric, charismatic, flawed, and utterly convincing. Critics noticed. Audiences noticed. And for the first time, Hollywood began to see Jamie Foxx differently. But one strong performance was not enough to shatter the typecast. Jamie needed more. In 2001, he auditioned for Michael Mann's Ali, the Muhammad Ali biopic starring Will Smith. The role was small. Drew Bundini Brown, Ali's cornerman and spiritual hype man. But it was significant. Mann was a legendary perfectionist, and working alongside Will Smith, one of the biggest stars in the world, was an opportunity Jamie could not afford to waste. Jamie immersed himself in Bundini's life, studying archival footage, learning his speech patterns, his rhythms, his energy. On set, he did not simply act, he became. His portrayal was so authentic, so lived in, that even Will Smith was startled. Jamie disappeared into that role, Smith later said. I forgot I was acting with him. Ali was a critical success, and Jamie's performance earned quiet but significant praise. He was no longer just the funny guy from In Living Color. He was an actor who could hold his own in prestige projects. The door was cracking open, but doors that crack open can also slam shut. Jamie knew that unless he delivered something undeniable, something that obliterated every doubt and every dismissive laugh, he would remain on the margins of serious cinema. He needed a role so demanding, so transformative, that it would force the world to see him not as Jamie Foxx the comedian, but as Jamie Foxx the artist. And then, in 2003, that role arrived. Taylor Hackford, a director known for biopics, was preparing to film Ray, the story of Ray Charles, one of the most iconic musicians in American history. The role required someone who could sing, play piano, embody blindness convincingly, and capture the emotional complexity of a genius haunted by addiction and loss. It was the role of a lifetime, and Jamie Foxx wanted it more than he had ever wanted anything. What happened next would not just change Jamie's career, it would redefine what the world believed he was capable of. The boy abandoned in Terrell, the comedian who hid behind a gender-neutral name, was about to step into the light and become immortal. When Jamie Foxx first read the script for Ray in 2003, he knew immediately that this was not just another audition. This was destiny arriving disguised as a screenplay. Ray Charles, the legendary musician who had redefined American soul, rhythm and blues, and gospel, was a figure so monumental that portraying him felt less like acting and more like attempting to channel a spirit. But Jamie did not approach the role with caution. He approached it with obsession. Director Taylor Hackford had already cast Jamie, but he made one thing brutally clear. If you don't disappear into Ray Charles, this film will fail, and it will be on you. The pressure was crushing. Ray Charles himself was still alive, watching, waiting to see if this comedian from In Living Color could do justice to a lifetime of genius, pain, and triumph. Jamie's preparation became monastic. He spent months learning to play piano, not just competently, but convincingly enough to fool musicians who had played alongside Ray Charles for decades. He practiced until his fingers bled, until muscle memory replaced thought, until he could sit at a piano, blindfolded, and let the music pour out as if it had always lived inside him. But the piano was only the beginning. To portray blindness authentically, Jamie had his eyes sealed shut with prosthetic glue for up to 14 hours a day during filming. He navigated sets in complete darkness, learning to move, to react, to perform without sight. "I wanted to know what Ray knew," Jamie explained. "The fear, the vulnerability, but also the freedom. He saw the world through sound, and I had to find that." The transformation was total. Jamie studied Ray's voice, his gestures, the way he tilted his head when listening, the precise rhythm of his laughter. He listened to hundreds of hours of interviews, watched every piece of archival footage available, and consulted with Ray's family and former bandmates. Slowly, Jamie Foxx began to vanish, and Ray Charles began to emerge. On set, the crew witnessed something extraordinary. Jamie was not performing Ray Charles. He had become him. Between takes, he stayed in character, speaking in Ray's voice, moving in Ray's rhythms. Co-stars found it unsettling, almost eerie. It was like Ray's ghost had taken over Jamie's body, one crew member recalled. The film wrapped in 2004. When Ray Charles saw an early cut, he wept. He called Jamie personally. "You got me, man," Ray said, his voice thick with emotion. "You really got me." Weeks later, Ray Charles passed away, never seeing the final film, but knowing his story was in the right hands. When Ray premiered in October 2004, the response was seismic. Critics did not simply praise Jamie's performance, they were stunned by it. Rolling Stone called it a revelation. Variety declared, "Jamie Foxx has delivered one of the greatest biographical performances in cinema history." The Hollywood Reporter wrote, "Foxx does not impersonate Ray Charles, he resurrects him." The accolades began pouring in. Golden Globe nomination, Screen Actors Guild nomination, BAFTA nomination, and then the one that mattered most, Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. Jamie Foxx, the abandoned boy from Terrell, the comedian who had to hide behind a woman's name just to get stage time, was now standing on the same ground as Marlon Brando, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Denzel Washington. On February 27, 2005, at the Kodak Theater in Los Angeles, Jamie sat in the audience surrounded by Hollywood royalty. Wearing a sleek black tuxedo, his hands trembling slightly. When Charlize Theron opened the envelope and announced, "And the Oscar goes to Jamie Foxx, Ray," the room erupted. Jamie stood, visibly shaken, and walked to the stage. Holding the golden statue, he looked out at the audience and began to speak. But his voice cracked almost immediately. "I want to thank my grandmother," he said, tears streaming down his face. "She's not here, but she raised me. She told me to be anything I wanted to be." He paused, overcome. "And Ray Charles, you gave me everything, man, everything." The speech was raw, unpolished, and devastatingly honest. This was not a victory lap. This was a boy who had spent his entire life trying to be enough. Finally, undeniably, being told that he was. Backstage, clutching the Oscar, Jamie broke down completely. Friends and colleagues surrounded him, but he could barely speak. The weight of the moment, the years of rejection, the abandonment, the invisibility, all of it collapsed into that single golden statue. Jamie Foxx had not just won an Oscar. He had proven to everyone, including himself, that the boy nobody wanted had become the man nobody could ignore. The comedian was dead. The actor was immortal. The Oscar was supposed to be the peak. For most actors, winning Best Actor is the crowning achievement, the validation that defines a legacy. But for Jamie Foxx, the Oscar was not the summit. It was merely the beginning of an ascent so steep, so relentless, that it would both define and nearly destroy him. In 2005, while still basking in the glow of Academy recognition, Jamie did something almost unthinkable. He released a music album. Not a vanity project, not a celebrity cash grab, but a legitimate rhythm and blues record titled Unbreakable. Critics were skeptical. The public braced for embarrassment. After all, actors who release albums rarely succeed. But Jamie was not just any actor. He was a musician first, trained on piano since childhood, raised in the church where rhythm and soul were languages spoken before English. Unbreakable debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and eventually went double platinum. The lead single, featuring Ludacris, dominated radio. Jamie Foxx was now not only an Oscar-winning actor, but a chart-topping musician. Then came Gold Digger. When Kanye West asked Jamie to sing the hook for what would become one of the biggest hits of the 2000s, Jamie hesitated for only a moment. The result was explosive. Gold Digger topped the Billboard Hot 100 for 10 weeks, became a cultural phenomenon, and earned Jamie his first Grammy Award. Suddenly, he was everywhere. On movie screens, on radio, in music videos, at award shows. The double conquest was unprecedented. No one in modern entertainment had dominated both music and film simultaneously at such heights. Not Will Smith, not Queen Latifah, not even Jamie's idol, Ray Charles, who had conquered music but never cinema. And Jamie did not stop. In 2006, he starred in Michael Mann's Miami Vice alongside Colin Farrell, a stylish, moody crime thriller that showcased Jamie's ability to anchor big-budget action films. Later that year, he appeared in Dreamgirls, the musical adaptation, where he held his own alongside Beyoncé, Eddie Murphy, and Jennifer Hudson. The film was a critical and commercial success, earning 8 Oscar nominations. In 2009, Jamie took on The Soloist, a devastating drama where he portrayed Nathaniel Ayers, a homeless, schizophrenic musical prodigy. The role required Jamie to descend into mental illness with the same commitment he had brought to Ray Charles's blindness. Critics praised his fearlessness, his refusal to make the character palatable or safe. But the crowning achievement came in 2012 with Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained. Jamie starred as Django, a freed slave turned bounty hunter on a brutal quest to rescue his wife from a sadistic plantation owner. The role was physically demanding, emotionally raw, and politically charged. Tarantino's script was unapologetic in its depiction of slavery's horrors, and Jamie's performance walked a razor's edge between fury and restraint. Django Unchained became a cultural landmark, grossing over $425 million worldwide and earning 5 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. Jamie was once again at the center of a cinematic phenomenon, cementing his status as one of the most bankable and respected actors in Hollywood. From the outside, Jamie Foxx's life looked like a fairy tale. Oscar winner, Grammy winner, box office titan, platinum-selling musician. He had wealth beyond imagination, homes in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, a car collection that rivaled Jay Leno's. He was invited to every party, every premiere, every exclusive event. But behind the glittering facade, cracks were forming. The schedule was inhuman. Filming movies while recording albums, performing concerts while promoting films, press tours that spanned continents, award shows that demanded speeches, smiles, and charm, even when exhaustion was suffocating him. Jamie later confessed, "There were nights I fell asleep in cars, in dressing rooms, in hotel lobbies. I couldn't remember what city I was in." The relentless pace left no room for healing. The boy who had been abandoned, who had felt invisible, who had created Jamie Foxx to survive, was still inside, and no amount of applause could silence the questions that haunted him in quiet moments. Am I enough? Will it all disappear? What happens when they stop clapping? Friends noticed changes. Jamie, once gregarious and playful, became guarded. He drank more, partied harder. The laughter that once came so easily now felt performed. Another role he played to keep people from seeing the exhaustion underneath. But Jamie could not afford to slow down. In entertainment, momentum is everything. One stumble, one failure, and the industry moves on to the next shining thing. So he kept running, kept performing, kept climbing. Even as the weight of his own success began to crush him, at the peak of his power, Jamie Foxx had everything the world could offer. Everything except peace. For all his success in film and music, Jamie Foxx's personal life remained a paradox. Publicly, he was the ultimate bachelor. Charming, elusive, photographed at parties with models and celebrities. Privately, he was something far more complex. A man terrified of repeating the abandonment that had defined his childhood. Jamie never married. Despite decades of relationships, some lasting years, he never walked down the aisle. Friends speculated it was fear of commitment. Tabloids painted him as a playboy. But those closest to Jamie understood the truth. He did not fear commitment. He feared failing at it the way his parents had failed him. His longest public relationship was with Katie Holmes, which lasted from 2013 to 2019. The pair were intensely private, rarely photographed together, almost never speaking about each other in interviews. When they finally split, Jamie offered no explanation, no dramatic statement. He simply moved on, guarding his heart the way a man guards a wound that never fully healed. But if Jamie struggled with romantic commitment, he never wavered in one role: father. He has two daughters, Corinne, born in 1994 to Connie Klein, and Annalise, born in 2009 to Kristen Grannis. The relationships with both women ended, but Jamie's dedication to his daughters never did. He refused to become his father, the ghost who disappeared. He refused to abandon his children the way his mother abandoned him. Corinne Foxx became the center of Jamie's universe. From the moment she was born, Jamie vowed she would never feel invisible, never question whether she was wanted, never carry the scars he had carried. He brought her to film sets, introduced her to the world with pride, and publicly declared her his heartbeat. When Corinne was 16, Jamie made a decision that stunned Hollywood. He asked her to be his Miss Golden Globe at the 2016 Golden Globe Awards, a prestigious role typically reserved for the children of industry royalty. Walking the red carpet together, Jamie's arm around his daughter, his eyes glistening with emotion, the world saw a side of him rarely visible. The father, not the star. "She saved my life," Jamie confessed in interviews. "When I hold her, I remember why I fought so hard to get here. It wasn't for Oscars or Grammys. It was so she would never feel what I felt." Corinne went on to build her own career, modeling, acting, and producing. But her greatest role, she often said, was being Jamie's anchor. When his schedule became overwhelming, When the pressure of fame mounted, Corinne was the voice that pulled him back. "Dad, slow down," she would tell him. And unlike everyone else in his orbit, he listened. Annalise, Jamie's younger daughter, remained more shielded from the spotlight. Jamie rarely spoke about her publicly, protecting her privacy with fierce determination. But those close to him saw the same devotion. He attended school events, birthday parties, and dance recitals, often arriving in disguise to avoid turning his daughter's moments into media spectacles. Fatherhood forced Jamie to confront the wound he had spent his life avoiding: abandonment. Every bedtime story he read was a story his mother never read to him. Every birthday party he threw was a party his father never attended. Every proud moment he celebrated with his daughters was a moment no one had celebrated for him. The irony was heartbreaking. Jamie Foxx, the man who could make millions laugh, who could move audiences to tears, who could sing, act, and perform with supernatural talent, struggled most with the simplest human act: being present. Not because he did not want to, but because he had no model for it. His grandparents had raised him with duty, not affection. His parents had raised him with absence. And yet, Jamie chose differently. He chose to show up. He chose to be the father he never had. He chose to break the cycle. Still, the toll was invisible to the public. Behind the smiles at premieres and the laughter on talk shows, Jamie carried a quiet exhaustion. He gave everything to his daughters, to his career, to the world that demanded endless performances. But he gave almost nothing to himself. Friends worried. "Jamie never stops," one close associate said. "He's always on, always performing, always proving." We kept telling him, "You've already proven enough. Rest." But he couldn't. It was like he believed the moment he stopped, it would all disappear. That belief, that fear, would haunt him in ways he could not yet imagine. Because in 2023, Jamie Foxx would be forced to stop. Not by choice, but by a medical crisis so sudden, so severe, that it would nearly kill him. And the voice that would pull him back from the edge would not be a director, a producer, or a doctor. It would be his daughter. April 11th, 2023 began like any other day on a film set. Jamie Foxx was in Atlanta, Georgia, filming Back in Action, a Netflix action comedy alongside Cameron Diaz. The production was running smoothly. Jamie was energetic, cracking jokes between takes, doing impressions to entertain the crew. At 55 years old, he seemed invincible. A man who had survived childhood abandonment, Hollywood rejection, and decades of relentless work without ever slowing down. And then, without warning, everything stopped. Jamie collapsed, not from exhaustion, not from a stumble or a fall. His body simply shut down, as if someone had flipped a switch and turned off the power. Crew members rushed to him, calling his name, but Jamie did not respond. His eyes were open, but vacant. Paramedics were called immediately. Within minutes, Jamie was loaded into an ambulance, sirens wailing as it sped toward Piedmont Hospital. In Los Angeles, Corinne Foxx received the call every child dreads. Her father, the man who had never missed a moment of her life, the man who seemed unbreakable, was in critical condition. She boarded the next flight to Atlanta, her hands trembling, her mind racing through worst-case scenarios she could not bear to finish. When she arrived at the hospital, the doctors' faces told her everything she needed to know. This was not a minor health scare. This was life or death. To this day, Jamie and his family have never publicly disclosed the exact nature of the medical emergency. Speculation ranged from stroke to brain aneurysm to heart complications. But the Foxx family maintained silence. protecting Jamie's privacy even as the world demanded answers. What is known, however, is this: Jamie Foxx nearly died. Years later, Jamie would confess in his Netflix special, "I don't remember 20 days. 20 days. Gone. Erased from his memory as if they had never existed." During that time, Jamie was in and out of consciousness, his body fighting a war he was not even aware of. Machines breathed for him. Monitors tracked his heartbeat. Doctors worked around the clock, uncertain if he would survive the night. Corinne never left his side. She slept in hospital chairs, held his hand during moments of crisis, and whispered to him even when he could not hear. "Dad, you have to fight," she told him, her voice breaking. "I need you. Annalise needs you. You can't leave us." And in those moments, when Jamie's body was shutting down, when the doctors prepared his family for the worst, something miraculous happened. Jamie's vitals stabilized, his breathing strengthened. The crisis, though far from over, had passed its most dangerous threshold. But survival was only the beginning. The road to recovery was brutal. Jamie could not walk. His speech was slurred. Simple tasks like lifting a glass of water or sitting upright required assistance. The man who had danced across stages, played piano with blinding speed, and commanded film sets with charisma was now struggling to complete basic physical therapy exercises. For weeks, Jamie remained in the hospital, undergoing treatments the family never detailed. Visitors were restricted. Press was banned. The world saw only silence and the occasional Instagram update from Corinne, carefully worded to reveal nothing and everything at once. "My father is recovering. Thank you for your prayers." But inside those hospital walls, Jamie was battling something deeper than physical recovery. He was confronting mortality. For a man who had spent his entire life running, performing, proving, this forced stillness was excruciating. He could not escape into comedy. He could not distract himself with work. He was alone with his thoughts, his fears, and the haunting realization that he had almost lost everything. "I saw the other side," Jamie later admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. He did not elaborate, but those who heard him understood. He had been close enough to death to feel its presence, close enough to wonder if he would ever hold his daughters again, close enough to question whether all the Oscars, Grammys, and accolades meant anything if he could not be there for the people who actually mattered. Corinne became more than his daughter during those weeks. She became his lifeline. When Jamie's spirits collapsed, when the pain and frustration made him want to give up, Corinne was the voice that refused to let him quit. "You taught me to fight, Dad," she told him. "Now it's my turn to teach you." By late May, Jamie was finally stable enough to be moved to a rehabilitation facility in Chicago, closer to specialized care and away from the relentless scrutiny of Atlanta. The improvement was slow, agonizingly slow, but it was improvement nonetheless. The world did not see Jamie Foxx for months. No public appearances, no social media posts, just silence. And in that silence, Jamie was learning the hardest lesson of his life: that he was not invincible, that the body he had pushed for decades without mercy had finally said, "Enough." The question now was whether Jamie would listen. Recovery from a near-death experience is not a straight line. It is a brutal, humbling climb where every small victory, standing without assistance, speaking a full sentence without slurring, remembering yesterday, feels monumental. For Jamie Foxx, a man who had spent his life performing at superhuman levels, this new reality was devastating. In the Chicago Rehabilitation Facility, Jamie underwent intensive physical and cognitive therapy. His body, once a finely tuned instrument capable of dancing, singing, and acting for 18-hour days, now struggled with stares. His mind, sharp enough to memorize entire scripts and execute flawless impressions, now fought to recall basic words. But Jamie was not alone. Corinne remained by his side, managing his care, shielding him from press intrusion, and providing the kind of unwavering support Jamie had given her throughout her life. The roles had reversed. The father who had protected his daughter from feeling abandoned was now being protected by that same daughter from the world's prying eyes. Slowly, agonizingly, Jamie began to heal. By summer 2023, he could walk short distances. By fall, he was speaking clearly again. And by winter, he was strong enough to face the question that had haunted him since waking up in that hospital bed. What now? For months, Jamie had avoided the spotlight entirely. Every public appearance was declined. Every interview request ignored. The world speculated endlessly. Tabloids published wild theories. Social media demanded answers. But Jamie remained silent. Not out of secrecy, but out of necessity. He was not ready. The wound was too fresh, the trauma too raw. But as 2024 began, Jamie realized something profound. He had spent his entire career making people laugh, making them cry, making them feel. He had shared Ray Charles's pain, Django's fury, and countless characters' humanity. But he had never shared his own. The time had come to tell his story. On December 10th, 2024, Netflix released Jamie Foxx. What had happened was a comedy special that was anything but typical. Filmed in Atlanta, the very city where his medical crisis began, Jamie took the stage alone. No co-stars, no safety net, just him, a microphone, and the truth. The special began with laughter. Jamie, ever the entertainer, opened with jokes, impressions, and the effortless charm that had defined his career. The audience roared, but then, slowly, the tone shifted. "I want to tell you what really happened," Jamie said, his voice dropping to something quieter, more vulnerable. The laughter faded. The room held its breath. He did not reveal every medical detail, respecting his own privacy and his family's wishes. But he revealed enough. He spoke of waking up in the hospital with no memory, of the terror of not recognizing his surroundings, of the physical pain that came with recovery. He spoke of Corinne, his voice cracking as he described how she refused to let him give up. "My daughter sat by my bed and told me, 'Dad, you're not going anywhere,'" Jamie said, tears visible in his eyes. "And I believed her, because she's never lied to me." The audience was silent now, many weeping openly. This was not a comedy special anymore. This was a man bearing his soul. Jamie spoke of the spiritual experience he had during those lost 20 days, hinting at something profound he encountered but could not fully explain. He spoke of looking at his life differently now, of realizing that all the fame, all the awards, all the money meant nothing if he could not be there for his daughters. "I almost missed it all," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every birthday, every laugh, every hug. I almost threw it away chasing something I already had." The special ended not with a punchline, but with gratitude. Jamie thanked his family, his medical team, and his fans. He thanked God. And then, in a moment that would become iconic, he sat at a piano and played. Just like he had as a boy in Terrell. Just like he had as Ray Charles. The music filled the theater, raw and beautiful. And when the final note faded, Jamie stood, looked at the audience, and simply said, "Thank you for letting me come back." The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Critics called the special brave, cathartic, and unlike anything Netflix has ever released. Audiences praised Jamie's vulnerability, but for Jamie, the special was not about accolades. It was about closure. It was about taking control of his own narrative one final time. What had happened became more than a comedy special. It became a testament to survival, a love letter to family, and a reminder that even the strongest among us are fragile. Jamie Foxx had faced death and returned, and in doing so, he had finally become the one thing he had chased his entire life: enough. In 2025, Jamie Foxx is 57 years old. He walks with the careful awareness of a man who has brushed against mortality and survived. His schedule, once a chaotic blur of film sets, recording studios, and red carpets, has slowed to something almost unrecognizable: intentional living. He no longer chases every role, every opportunity, every spotlight. The frantic hunger that once drove him to exhaustion has been replaced by something quieter, something deeper: gratitude. Physically, Jamie is not the same. The medical crisis left its mark. He tires more easily. Certain movements require caution. His doctors monitor him closely, a regimen of checkups and preventative care that he now embraces rather than resists. "I listen to my body now," he admitted in a recent interview. "For years, I ignored it. I paid the price." But what Jamie lost in invincibility, he gained in clarity. His relationship with Corinne has deepened into something almost sacred. She is no longer just his daughter. She is his partner in navigating this second chapter of life. They collaborate professionally, Corinne producing projects and managing aspects of Jamie's career. But more importantly, they collaborate personally, father and daughter, walking through life together, healing wounds neither of them created, but both inherited. Annalise, now 15, remains more private, but Jamie speaks of her with the same fierce devotion. "I don't want her to remember me as the guy who won an Oscar," he said. "I want her to remember me as the dad who showed up." Showing up. That has become Jamie's new measure of success. He still works, of course. Back in Action, the film he was shooting when he collapsed, was completed and released on Netflix in January 2025. Watching it, audiences saw Jamie Foxx, the performer, charming and dynamic. But those who knew the story saw something else: a man who had literally fought back from death to finish what he started. Jamie's fortune remains substantial, estimated at over $170 million. He owns properties in Hidden Valley, California, including a sprawling estate where he now spends most of his time. Far from the chaos of Hollywood, the mansion is not just a symbol of wealth, it is a sanctuary, a place where Jamie can simply be Eric Bishop again, the boy from Terrell who never forgot where he came from. And he has not forgotten. Jamie has quietly increased his philanthropic efforts, focusing on causes close to his heart: music education for underprivileged children, support for abandoned and foster youth, and scholarships for young performers trying to break into an industry that almost broke him. "I want kids who feel invisible to know they're not," Jamie explained. "I want them to know that the boy nobody wanted became someone the world couldn't ignore. If I can do it, they can too." His legacy in entertainment is undeniable. An Academy Award, a Grammy, platinum albums, iconic performances in Ray, Django Unchained, Collateral, Dreamgirls, a comedy career that influenced a generation, a musical catalog that still plays on radio stations worldwide. Jamie Foxx did not just succeed in Hollywood, he conquered it on his own terms. But when asked about legacy now, Jamie does not mention the Oscar. He does not talk about box office numbers or chart positions. He talks about Corinne and Annalise. "My legacy is not what I left on screen," he said. "It's what I left in them. If they grow up knowing they were loved, knowing they were wanted, knowing they were enough, then I did something my parents couldn't do for me. I broke the cycle." And perhaps that is the truest measure of Jamie Foxx's life. Not the awards or the accolades, but the choice to be present when it would have been easier to disappear. The choice to love when he had never been shown how. The choice to heal instead of hiding. The boy abandoned at 7 months old grew into a man who refuses to abandon anyone. The child who wept in silence grew into a father who makes sure his daughter's laughter is the loudest sound in the room. The comedian who hid behind a woman's name to survive grew into an artist brave enough to stand on stage and say, "This is what almost killed me, and this is how I survived." Jamie Foxx is not perfect. He has made mistakes. In relationships, in choices, in the relentless way he drove himself for decades. But he is honest about those mistakes. And that honesty, that vulnerability, has become his greatest strength. In quiet moments, Jamie still sits at the piano, his fingers dancing across keys the way they did in New Hope Baptist Church when he was 5 years old. The music has not changed, but the man playing it has. He is slower now, softer, more human. And for the first time in his life, Jamie Foxx is not running from invisibility. He is embracing visibility on his own terms. As a father, a survivor, and a man who finally understands that being enough was never about the applause. It was always about showing up. The boy from Terrell became a legend, but the legend became a man, and the man became whole.